Hey everyone, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Elizabeth Bowe, and I am on the SEEP Network Board of Directors. On behalf of Joe Swimmer, our Executive Director, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar and thank you for joining us. You will have a really fantastic time listening to and learning from the fabulous people on today's webinar. So with no further ado, I will turn it over to Alan Yarbrough, who's our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and it's great to be here with you all tuning in and with our panelists, some of whom are friends that I've known for a while, and some are new friends I'm connecting with for this program today. I'm really honored to be moderating today's SEEP webinar on Haiti. I lived and worked in Haiti as a part of the Episcopal Church's Young Adult Service Corps for about 3 years, worked in economic and community development, and with the St. Barnabas Agriculture Center outside of Cap-Haïtien. And a key part of that experience was this ministry of presence, sort of being almost like oil to help get gears working together. And I feel that same sentiment today to an extent. I'm humbled to be bringing in, excuse the background noise, I'm humbled to be bringing in my current advocacy work on US policy to Haiti with our Episcopal Church Office of Government Relations, and bringing that in a way into the work of several amazing organizations we'll hear from today, Food for the Poor, St. Vincent's, and the Haiti Nursing Foundation being represented here. And I think it's important to emphasize presence and relationship in any work and any collaboration that we do with Haiti, and I want to share a few reasons why. Many of you may be coming to this webinar, as Haiti's been in the news lately, especially for the presidential assassination, then an earthquake and a tropical storm, and finally the situation of Haitian migrants at the US southern border. And the Episcopal Church is advocating on these issues, particularly for good governance and anti-corruption measures. And in that advocacy, there are two core components that we're pushing for any engagement in Haiti. The first is emphasizing Haitian-led solutions. In a joint statement that we signed on to with a little over 100 other organizations, both in Haiti and the US, it really emphasizes Haitian-led solutions, not just for the political crisis going on, but other dynamics as well. We've also been sharing and promoting what's called the Pledge for New Standards of Engagement, which was inspired in part by the response to the earthquake that happened a couple of months ago, to help improve the direct engagement with Haitians in Haiti, again, emphasizing Haitian-led solutions. And I think you'll hear about that from our speakers today. Second, in that advocacy, we've been emphasizing this need to break down the silos among the issues that are going on in Haiti, that they're all connected, and that there is ongoing work, really good work, like the work that these organizations are doing, that's happening, that's there, that's behind the headlines, and improving overpass engagement, from assessing food insecurity, addressing housing needs, access to medical care, and really reaching out to some of the most marginalized populations in the country. All of this is critical to the political dynamics, it's critical to the migration dynamics. So what we're talking about here, while it is tangible, while it is specific to the context of these organizations, it fits within a larger context of our relationship between the church in the US and the church in Haiti, between the government in the US and the government in Haiti as well. So I hope that you'll hear a lot of practical information in today's program. I'm looking forward to learning along with you and what these organizations do, how they interact with one another as well. And so without further ado, and to get the ball rolling, I want to invite Bishop Oge, head of Food for the Poor in Haiti, to offer an opening prayer and introductory remarks. So I'll turn it over to you, Bishop Oge.
Alan, thank you very much. Good afternoon, friends. Oh, I haven't seen you for ages, so good to be with you this afternoon. Thank you very much. So let us pray. God of love and mercy, you have called us to be your witnesses to the world. As you gather here this afternoon on the net, to see how we can work together, how we can better serve your people, those who are suffering. Send us your Holy Spirit, can guide us, open our minds and hearts to better understand what you have called us to do, and to continue to be our witnesses to those who are suffering. Give us strength and courage, ideas, and new ways to work with them. That your love will be manifest in their lives. They will see you in action in their lives. They will come to you, Lord. Be with us. Be with those who have been involved in supporting this ministry of serving the poor, our donors, our colleagues, and make us always mindful of the needs of those who have been called to serve. And through our ministry, they can see you and be with you now and forever. Amen.
Thank you, Bishop Oge, for the opening prayer. I was wondering if you wanted to get us started briefly with sort of some context of why we're holding this webinar today, and then we'll get into more detail about Food for the Poor as we go. And you're muted.
Hello, could you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
How much time I have?
You can start with just a couple of minutes introduction. That would be perfect. And then hopefully we can open up the conversation as we go.
Yes. Let's see. First of all, thank you for having me on this panel. Glad to see you, Alan, Elizabeth, Carola, Isabel, and Kevin. Always good friends and colleagues. Let me begin by saying Food for the Poor is not really an NGO. It's a ministry. And when I say ministry, that means to me we work with the churches. Ministry is about evangelism, and the churches are those doing evangelism. So we work with them. And through that network in Haiti, Food for the Poor has been able to accomplish a lot. When I say the churches, I mean all the churches: Roman Catholic Church, Episcopal Church, Protestant churches, Methodist, Adventist, Seventh-day Adventist, Baptist, all in it. We work with all of them. And that enables us to reach out to people wherever they are. As you know, churches are everywhere in Haiti, in the cities, in the towns, in the valleys, in the mountains, everywhere. So when you are working with the churches, you can reach to everybody. So just to give an example, after the earthquake, the same day, August 14, Food for the Poor was able to start serving people in Ledni and in Jeremy, because Food for the Poor has two large distribution centers in those two areas. There's also one in Lekai, but that one has been looted, and we're waiting for the Cardinal to build a new one. But we start serving people the same day, August 14, by opening what we have in stock. We call for the hurricane season. We have things in stock that we use them that same day. And the following day, on Sunday the 15th, with the Association of our Workers, help from Florida, and board members, we started dispatching goods: food, medicine, medical supplies, disaster item, and so on. Up to last week, 2 weeks before I left, I'm abroad right now, talking to you from Florida. Before I left, Food for the Poor had served at that time about 35,000 families already. It was for the relief part of it. Now we started the second phase, which is rehabilitation. We're in the business of helping the farmers to go back to the farms, to the fields, trying to collect funds to provide them with seeds and farming tools to make sure they can get back to work and produce things that can eat within the next 2 to 3 months. We're also working with the churches and the government to see how we can help with temporary shelters for the schools, temporary classrooms, because almost all the schools in that part, in South, NIP and Gandas, all the schools have collapsed. So we have to have structure so they can go back to school. So that's what we are doing right now, the second phase. And Gisabel and Kevin, you know a lot of it, Kaola also. So that's, we're doing together, Food for the Poor. When I say Food for the Poor, I mean Food for the Poor, Haiti and Florida. That's, there is one Food for the Poor. And we will make sure that also we've been providing some temporary shelters to some families. Because just before the crisis, the COVID-19, Food for the Poor used to build 150 homes in Haiti every month. We continue to build during the pandemic. For instance, the same week that we had that earthquake, was able to give new homes to 60 new families, brand new homes. We're building them, they did collapse. But we were to put some families in the brand new homes. So that's what we're doing in terms of action on the ground. And we're doing it also because of our partnership with the churches and our donors and our colleagues from Florida. If I may also briefly, we are facing some challenges in Haiti, as Alan mentioned at the very beginning. The first challenge we are facing is food insecurity. This is a serious business. I can tell you, from March to June of this year, over 1,200,000 people have been living to extreme food insecurity situation. And over 3 million in food insecurity. More than 4 million of people in Haiti right now have trouble getting something to eat, or families cannot feed their children. And as you know, most of the things that we are using in Haiti in terms of food are imported. At the same time, there's a devaluation of the local currency. You need more than 100 goods for $1 US. So devaluation of the currency, devaluation, and people cannot afford to pay. Even those, the importers have trouble to get the US dollars to import. Not only food doesn't exist, but people cannot afford what is on the market. And it's quite a challenge for us. That has been fueled also by the political unrest. And that started really, we have seen that coming since July 2018, almost July 6, 7, 8, 2018, unrest all over the Port-au-Prince. And since that time, the situation is getting worse and worse by day. Today, the gangs are all over the place. People have been kidnapped. The churches are not safe either. As you know, early this year, Roman Catholic nuns and priests got kidnapped. They went to a Seventh-day Adventist to kidnap the minister and his choir master and other people. An Anglican priest, an Episcopal priest working with me, has been kidnapped. We managed to get him out after 36 hours, and he had to leave the country. And last Sunday, a Baptist minister was kidnapped in his church. The Sunday before, a deacon was killed and his wife kidnapped. Those are really serious business that we cannot really, we don't know. And added to that, the migration crisis. The migration crisis is also serious business. Over the last 2 years, about 100,000 people have left Haiti to go to Brazil, to Latin America. And some have to find their ways to the El Dorado, to the US. And many of them died in the forest. And as you know, 2 weeks ago now, they have been, about 15,000 of them have been deported back to Haiti. And but most of them vowed to come back to the States because there is no hope, there's no future. And then the COVID crisis. Haitians tried to ignore that crisis, but it's there. COVID is killing people in Haiti. We don't know how many, because the testing is not available. It's only in Port-au-Prince and rare locations in the country. Many people have died of COVID, but we don't know them because they are never tested. And also ignorance. The US administration gave us vaccines, 1 million doses of vaccine, but we are quite slow to take it, to use them. Even Food for the Poor has been involved. Food for the Poor through the arranged for us to take the freezers for the government, and the vaccines got there. We tried to get our staff to get vaccinated, but it's not that easy. People, because of ignorance, people are very reluctant to get vaccinated. So you have earthquake, security, food crisis, political unrest, migration crisis, and COVID. There is no hope, there is no life of all of those. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop, for elaborating on the current environment in Haiti. I think that's really helpful for folks to hear, that there are all of these dynamics going on, and in that, comes the work of Food for the Poor and St. Vincent. So next, I want to introduce Mother Carola. I think your title is Manager of Episcopal Mission and Development, I believe, with Food for the Poor. So if you could tell us, about who Food for the Poor is, what their role is in Haiti, and maybe along the way, some of the challenges and joys that you face in that work.
All right. Thank you, Alan. Yes, I have been working with Food for the Poor for 7 years now. And for those of you who do not know much about Food for the Poor, let me start with my favorite statement. Food for the Poor is about food and so much more. I love what you said, Bishop Oge, that we are not an NGO, we are a ministry. And that really needs to be underlined and highlighted, that we are a ministry to the people and nation of Haiti and 16 other countries in the Caribbean and Latin America. Haiti is the country where we do the most. We do relief and development, we do disaster relief, and we do recovery work. And it's important to differentiate. I mean, as Bishop Oge said, we were able to come in and provide immediate help. On the day of the earthquake, we provided help. But now the prospect before us, as it is in so many countries, is the work of development. And development includes education and housing and water and vocational education and agriculture and things we haven't even thought of yet, I think, to help the people of Haiti and these other countries. And we do this through donations from churches, from people, from countries. The nation of Taiwan gives rice to Haiti through Food for the Poor, for example. So there are different ways of helping. And we build it with partnerships. People sometimes say, well, what's the difference between you and this and other organization? And we don't want to have differences. We want to have partnerships with the different organizations so that we can do more ministry in Haiti and other places. And we want to build partnerships with churches as well and donors. One of our partners is St. Vincent's, and Elizabeth is going to be saying how we have worked together with St. Vincent's. And I'm friends with a group called the Haiti Micah Project that has a orphanage in Haiti, and Food for the Poor helps there. And we have so many various partnerships. And I will just end by saying we have been in Haiti for over 30 years. Right, Jezebel? Good. And we are there on the ground with 400 employees at Food for the Poor in Haiti, and with work that will be ongoing. And God is in the midst of all of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mother Corolla. I appreciate it. Talking about the existing capacity that is there with Food for the Poor that really, enables the response, to happen as quickly as it did with the earthquake, and to address other issues as well. And that capacity being, the staff of the organization, but also the relationships. So that leads right into introducing Elizabeth Lowell. It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you.
Thank you. Yeah, so Elizabeth works both with St. Vincent's and the Haiti Nursing Foundation. So similar question for you. Can you tell us about St. Vincent's, in particular, and its connection to Food for the Poor?
I'm delighted to talk about St. Vincent's, and thank you for including us in this webinar. We are also a ministry. We were founded in 1945 by Sister Joan, who was a physical therapist with the Sisters of St. Margaret, an amazing group of women who also founded the Haiti School of the Trinity Schools and the Music School. And one of their sisters in Haiti is on our board right now. We're best known for our school. It is a school for some 200 plus children, ages 3 through 9th grade. And I say 9th grade because some of our students are older than what you would find in the US due to their disabilities. We teach in Creole and sign language. We start our 3-year-olds out with sign language because a language is so important to begin at that age. And we teach what you would expect in this country. We teach history, we teach art, we teach music, we teach math. We introduce French in 3rd grade, and by the time our students graduate in 9th grade, many of them also speak Spanish and/or English. So we're talking about people who are fluent in 3, 4, 5 languages. Disabled doesn't mean you can't learn, where there's no cognitive impairment. So our school is 15 miles outside of downtown Port-au-Prince. We lost our original school in the 2010 earthquake, with some loss of life. And we also have downtown, this is the other part of our ministry in 3 parts. We have a medical clinic and a brace shop in the same building, a block and a half or so from what was the palace, no longer there. And we have orthopedic surgeons, pediatricians, a psychologist, an ophthalmologist. Our brace shop makes braces, yes, but they also make prostheses. And we are here also basically for children. Usually our oldest patient is about 15 years old. We're known throughout the country of Haiti. People travel to us because they know they can get competent medical care and attention at a rate they can afford. We charge little to nothing because we know the needs are so great. Our role in Haiti basically revolves around medical care and education. We're changing lives. And our partnership with Food for the Poor helps to do that. Monday through Friday, we offer a hot meal on our campus in Santo 17. For some of the 300 people, students, faculty, administration, maintenance, etc., for some of them, it is their only meal of the day. Food for the Poor provides most of that food for us. And if one can say a friend in need is a friend indeed, Food for the Poor is probably our best friend, and we are grateful. It's not only the food, however, it's the experience and the referrals and the other kind of help. Food for the Poor was able to get our folks to get COVID vaccines, and Food for the Poor transports wheelchairs for us to Haiti for our students in wheelchairs, because our students are deaf and or blind and or in wheelchairs. And they also, we've just bought 4 new shipping containers so we can start a physical therapy department. Food for the Poor checked them out for us. We weren't able to get to look at them. they were able to send people to say, yes, you should buy them. They're in excellent shape. So we are grateful beyond words for this partnership for Food for the Poor. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and definitely emphasizes the beauty of these relationships and need for them as well, and hopefully, opportunities for new relationships to begin as well. So turning back to Food for the Poor, I want to introduce Jezebel, who is the manager of disaster relief, is the title that I have for you. And so, I moved to Haiti with the Young Adult Service Corps in 2013. So that was 3 years after the 2010 earthquake, and 4 years or so after a major hurricane had hit Haiti and Gonaive. And I remember speaking to people, Episcopalians in particular, this is what I'm going to do. And people would ask me, oh, well, how was Haiti after the hurricane? Or how was Haiti after the earthquake? And they couldn't even remember which it was. And in fact, it had been both. And similar this year, there was the earthquake on the Southern Peninsula, followed quickly by flooding from a tropical storm. All that could be looked at as, oh, Haiti is in need again. It's another disaster. It's true. But there also are organizations like Food for the Poor who have been doing this for decades, even well before the 2010 earthquake. And so I hope I haven't set you up too much in a different way from what you plan to talk about, but I'd love to hear from you about the disaster relief parts of Food for the Poor in particular.
Yeah. So thank you, Alan and SEEP, for having us here today, and just to talk about not only about Haiti, but also how we respond to disasters like this. And of course, Bishop Oge, I say he is the hands and feet of God, just as all of our 400 Haitian staff, and Elizabeth, your staff on the ground in Haiti, you are walking the walk. I am here, as you can see, at Food for the Poor Florida, for the most part, really being a resource and a support to Food for the Poor Haiti in many ways. And so I'll talk very briefly how Food for the Poor has responded. So I'll share my screen here. And I know Mother Carola tells me that she's not a huge fan of PowerPoints, but it's a good guide. So as I talk here, I'll share this with you. So hopefully, can you all see that? I hope you can. Okay. So this is sort of our 1 month infograph that we created. Obviously, we've a little bit far removed from 1 month, but Food for the Poor, obviously having Food for the Poor Haiti on the ground, that's been there since 1985. So we have 400 Haitian staff, like we said. They quickly mobilized, we connected with them, and they had almost a situation room, right? We've established and streamlined communications. That is very important in times of disasters with all of our in-country partners. And we do that very basic through WhatsApp. WhatsApp has become a #1 form of communication, especially in times of disasters. But as we've learned yesterday, if any of you had the experience of WhatsApp and Facebook and Instagram being down, we are now looking for alternatives to WhatsApp, because so as we have disasters and as we have these sort of curveballs that come at us, we're consistently trying to learn and apply. As Bishop Oge said, for that first month and probably about, I would say, 5 or 6 weeks, we were in that relief mode. Because Food for the Poor has distribution centers in every department throughout Haiti, specifically in Port-au-Prince, and we outfit these distribution centers with goods, we were able to, like Bishop Oge say, immediately dispatch goods that we had there. So disaster relief aid items, hygiene items, and other medical aid through not just church ministries, but also health centers, hospitals, schools that we work with, and other organizations that are doing beautiful work on the ground. They know their community. They know exactly how to get to the needs and assess the needs of their communities. And we always say, whenever we have communities in need, where do they turn to first? Not just for that spiritual, but that hope is always the leadership of the church. And when organizations move out, who stays behind? It's the church that stays behind. It's the leadership of that community that stays behind. And so for us, and you said it right, Alan, it is about Haitian-led solutions. It's a bottom-up collaboration. So for us, that means that we are not replacing mechanisms. with how we want it to run, but that we are supporting those mechanisms. And that's exactly how this flow of operation is going through at Food for the Poor Haiti. And one of the things that Bishop Oge didn't share, which I admire so much about him, is that Food for the Poor Haiti, because we know we have a long-standing relationship in the communities, but also with the government and the various ministries, we're able to also be an advocate for all organizations. So I know he was on the phone with various ministries and the Prime Minister the same day, trying to advocate for a safe humanitarian corridor, because as we know, anything coming out of the Port-au-Prince area had to travel through the Martesante area, which is still currently led by various gangs, making it very difficult for many humanitarian organizations to pass through. So that took place right away. We were advocating, releasing goods, and beginning the operations of in-kind. Food for the Poor here in the US, we probably mobilize close to about 1,000 containers of goods and help other organizations like St. Vincent to mobilize and clear specific items to help support because of the longstanding relationships. And since Haiti, we have been able to mobilize, I think by now, over 90 total truckloads. You could see this here. Also to hospitals, we have a doctor on staff who is also in tune and in line with many hospitals, their needs. And that took place, same thing right after the earthquake in this case. And as we know, about a week or so later, Tropical Storm Grace. And I want to highlight one beautiful thing out of this. And Bishop Oge mentioned it. I think we're up to 60 homes now based on what he just said. But I want to highlight something. On Wednesday, so the earthquake took place, and let me just hold on one second here. I'm going to stop share and reshare this. So if you can see there, we sent out a technical team to assess Food for the Poor. Obviously, we ramped up production of construction of homes to about 150 because of COVID. And with the earthquake, the first thing we wanted to do was send out a technical team, which went out that Wednesday as soon as we could get a flight into the various areas, and assess some of the homes that were already in construction. And if they were almost in completion, right? Maybe they didn't have paint yet, but they sustained little to absolutely no damage, and families felt safe returning or going into a home. We did that. And, you know, these are some of the pictures of some of the state, obviously, of the technical assessment team as they assessed after the earthquake. You can see some sustained much more damages than others. But I want to share and focus on this picture right here. This is one of the 60 families that I want to say, obviously, I think it was maybe within 2 weeks that 48 families out of the 60 received a home. So imagine being a family going through the earthquake, losing everything, and maybe not having, you know, maybe living in a shack because they were already in line to receive a home in the affected area, to then experiencing Tropical Storm Grace. And we saw some of those pictures and what that reflected. Families huddled, holding the poles together of a tarp as the winds and the rains were coming through. And I'll never forget this image, and I keep talking about it, and I get emotional every time I see it, because I'm a mother of 2 kids, and I'm sure many of you are parents, or you have nieces and nephews, or you love, you know, children. And I saw this mother with her kids, each separated, holding a pole in about 1 inch or 2 of water in bare feet. And when I saw that image, I just kept thanking God for Food for the Poor in Haiti and all of the work that we were able to do, because as a family, you can see this family here that was able to see hope and light at the end of the tunnel, and having a home with sanitation. With now all of our homes are built with a seismic beam that can support seismic shift. So it's about mitigating risk. How do we build back better? And so hopefully soon, I know Food for the Poor is working on a plan to build additional homes. And I know that that's still in progress, so I won't go too far ahead of that news. But I know that we are working on construction. And even though it's just a drop in the bucket over 55,000 homes were destroyed with this earthquake alone. And so I just kind of wanted to share with this. And the next step of the rehabilitation, we are doing much more baseline data assessments. That's our next step into the rehabilitation phase. And Bishop Oge mentioned two key things. The number one thing coming out of a lot of the UN OSHA reports and a lot of the government reports is agriculture. It's the need to get back into the field. And I'm so happy to hear that Food for the Poor Haiti is now really diving into that. And this would have been time for students to get back into school. And so that we are, and I hope I can maybe share one last video. It is not perfect by any means, and I hope I can share sound here. I received this morning in WhatsApp, and I think it's so important to share. We are supporting this temporary schools and temporary shelters, and we're sending lumber, we're sending zinc into some of these areas, and the communities are coming together to build their schools, and I hope you can enjoy this video. So I hope you could all see that. That is lumber arriving and the whole community coming together to build their temporary school with joy, with love. And, you know, our hope comes in the Lord, and it's there in the morning. Joy comes in the morning. And so I hope, Alan, I just wanted to share also a little bit of that hope and end it with a good note of all the work that we're doing in Haiti. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. And I was going to turn to Elizabeth, and I will again with Bishop Oge. I see that you've unmuted. I don't know if you had a follow-up comment
No,
to Isabel.
I was going to say, Isabel, thank you very much for what you have been doing for us. And that video is from Cavaillon. We are building 3 schools there, temporary classrooms for 3 Roman Catholic parishes. You see the building at the back. That building people cannot get into that school building. They need the temporary classroom. The video is from Cavaillon. Good work. Thank you, Isabel. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Bishop. So I want to point one thing out as I turn to Elizabeth that I hope is apparent to folks. So there's often a lot of focus on Port-au-Prince, and the rest of Haiti is not always highlighted. And a lot of the work that you're hearing about from Food for the Poor, you know, in part is out of necessity because of where the earthquake took place this year, and parts of the Southern Peninsula fairly far away from Port-au-Prince. But that work in addressing food insecurity and housing, agriculture and economic opportunity is particularly critical outside of the capital. And looking at migration patterns within Haiti, at opportunities, you know, both not just within Port-au-Prince, but outside as well. So there really is not just a diversity in what folks are working on, you know, in this panel, but also where within Haiti they are working. So we're kind of traveling back to Port-au-Prince again, turning back to Elizabeth to hear a bit more detail about what St. Vincent's is doing there.
Thank you. And yes, back to Port-au-Prince, but also to the south, because St. Vincent's is uniquely positioned with our skill sets to respond to the earthquake. Our medical director is an orthopedic surgeon. Dr. Moise was helicoptered to Jérémie the day the earthquake struck. In his first week, he saw 189 patients and he operated on 60 of them. Meanwhile, the clinic stayed open in Port-au-Prince for others who needed that. One of our trustees, Dr. Woolley, is the only trauma surgeon in Haiti. The most severely injured earthquake victims were transported to Port-au-Prince. In his first week, he operated on 15 people who had a crushed pelvis. So we were intimately involved with the damage to human lives. In addition to this, our wonderful director of St. Vincent's, Père Ernel Duveau, came to us from Jérémie. He was getting incessant phone calls for help. He put together a team on the ground. We wired money down, and he was able to get cash to people in some of the really far-flung communities so that they were able to buy what they needed as the goods became available. So we were able to respond to the earthquake at the same time, reopening school, keeping the clinic going, etc. And I think I want to address Haitian-led solutions. I want to address it first from our board, which is we are a tax-exempt organization in the US, and we have 12 directors. 7 of them are Haitian. 5 of us come from the US. We listen to them. What is it that they think the school and the medical clinic and the brace shop need? And then our job is to raise that money. We have to raise $200,000 anyway for just operating expenses to keep the school and the clinic going. And then we have capital projects and we reach out to parishes and individuals and dioceses to raise that. But what are we doing to build local capacities, which is what long-term is going to make the difference in Haiti? And at the medical clinic, we've added psychology, and the psychologist goes to the school 1 day a week. We have an X-ray machine, which the Japanese embassy gave to us. Thanks be to God for the Diocese of North Dakota, which gave us a medical lab last year. All this saves people from traveling a distance. We are moving into physical therapy, as I said earlier. Our physicians are hoping to have electronic medical records this year, and we have put together a proposal for an Episcopal diocese in this country to fund that. We hope to add a dental clinic and nutrition and some day surgery, as well as a pharmacy. So this is to continue to meet the medical and health needs of the Haitian population. At the school, we have ongoing faculty enrichment. They are all learning sign language if they didn't know it before. They have ongoing education with Quisqueya University. In terms of practicality, some of our older adult residents at the school repair wheelchairs and fit them, tailor them to the needs, not only of our other students, but others in the area. They repair Braille machines, which have 296 parts. We no longer have to send a Braille machine back to Perkins Institute for the Blind in Massachusetts and have it repaired there. We have an organic garden now. So we supplement what Food for the Poor gives us. It means it's more nutritious food for our students and that we can share it with neighbors. We are installing a potable water system. Rather than having to buy it, we will be able to share any surplus with our neighbors. We hope eventually to have assistive technology for our deaf and blind students. It runs on iPads. That will lead them into computer training. They will then be eligible to be hired by the greater public in Haiti to work in computers. So everything takes a long time, but inch by inch, we are responding to what our Haitians are asking for and making sure that we are able to give them those skills. Let me just unplug the phone while I keep talking. I wanted to give you a few examples of some of our graduates and what they're doing. Jamim is a psychology major at the University of Kansas. She hopes to become a psychologist. She has no arms. Swanette was left at St. Vincent's as a child because her legs didn't work properly. She eventually received the operation she needed. She is now the government minister of inclusion for people with disabilities. Judith, who was left at St. Vincent at age 8, is in cooking school to become a chef. Jimmy was left with us at age 3. He teaches Braille to the blind students. He also plays the piano and the accordion, and he is blind. So these are just some examples of the lives that are being changed in partnership with many of you who are on this call and in partnership with Food for the Poor. And yes, it takes a long time, but it is worth everything.
Thanks, Elizabeth, for speaking to what I think is just so much opportunity here, and the people that are ministered to at times and by these organizations and these ministries, but also a part of that ministry back and ministry out. You know, and I think it also takes this nimbleness in a sense to be resourceful, to pivot, to help each other out, you know, across various barriers. You know, Bishop Oge mentioned ecumenical work, partnering with other churches that's so critical. The work between the two organizations here, and then of course with a bunch of different partners and supporters in the US. So with that in mind, I want to introduce Kevin, who is the manager of expansion for Food for the Poor. And I hope you can kind of bring this all home to an extent for our audience members who are outside of Haiti, I think many of them in the US, to talk about how they, especially SEEP members, may be able to partner with these organizations and get more involved. Kevin.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Alan. And it really is a privilege to be here. I've been involved with SEEP for a few years and really just think the world of what SEEP does and Joe Swimmer and his leadership. So thank you for that opportunity. You know, it would be a loss if we didn't mention Episcopal Relief and Development as one of the most powerful relief and development organizations in the country that operates through the world. And you know, I remember a couple of years ago when Hurricane Dorian hit the Bahamas, Bishop Peter Eaton brought us together and said, you know what, you really should be seeking partnership with Episcopal Relief and Development. And we've been working constantly, almost monthly, to try to shore that up. And I think the latest that I have heard is that we are working on a project to deliver tents to people in the earthquake zone. And I just wanted to say that because they definitely have a place here. I also want to say that if you're wondering what your parish could do to help, we have the ability to do something very similar to what the Catholic Church does. It's a twinning process where we can find you an Episcopal community that you can channel your passion to help out. Traditionally, this is not the easiest thing to do, but Bishop has given me the flexibility to allow us to establish these twinning-like communities where if there's one that in a community that has been impacted, we can go in and do projects like that. And that's what my role is. I think the first thing that has to happen is a relationship has to be built. And that's what I try to do with each parish and find out what their desire is. Is it building houses? Is it supplying water? A lot of water needs right now after the earthquake. And is it schools? And so just know that that's where it all begins, is a conversation, and would love to have that opportunity to do that. You know, it's interesting to say and that since the 2010 earthquake, we've built, I think, over 11,000 houses now, and those are 2-bedroom houses. They are furnished with clean bedding, which is a really big deal now. They have solar lighting, which really extends the day for the people of Haiti to be able to do things that we enjoy here in our life in the U.S., of being able to do homework, things like that. And those are 51 square meter houses. That equates to 549 square foot houses, and they're built for $9,800 each. And so if that gives you a little bit of an idea of what it costs to really provide a family with a safe place to live, then that's what that is. So, you know, I think the next step would be to, if anybody out there has interest in establishing some communication, then just reach out and let us know, and we'll have a conversation about that. The South Florida Haiti Project is another great partner in this. They have a big operation in Bondo, and we have several churches down here in the Southeast Florida Diocese that has been working Haiti for a long time. And if you have any questions about the work that we do, go to your brothers and sisters in the church and ask them what they think and how they work, and I think they'll give you some good, honest answers as well. So that's my word to you. I know we're about at our time limit, but thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for just listening, for participating. More than anything, thank you for loving the people of Haiti and for taking the time to just listen to an update from the country that we all love.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. And we do have a few minutes for questions. So if folks have questions they would like to ask our panelists, please use the chat feature to submit them. I do have a couple that have come in. The first, I think I'll direct back to you, Bishop Oge, but others chime in as well. So some folks listening in, and frankly myself included to an extent, are more familiar with parts north of Port-au-Prince, so a different region in Haiti than what was most impacted by the recent earthquake and flooding. So I'm wondering if you could share a bit about what Food for the Poor is doing, perhaps longer term, but also in the northern parts of the country.
Question for me. Is that so?
Sure.
Thank you. Yes. While we are serving the people in the Southern Peninsula, we didn't stop doing the work that we're doing the other part of Haiti. Right now, Food for the Poor has 12 distribution centers across the country. 12. We're about to open another one in October with the Archbishop of Haitian. We have project staff based in the northern part of Haiti to look at over the projects, housing and community development projects that we have. We are about to open satellite offices so we can get closer to the local church and to the local people who are serving, not only for food distribution, but also for project development. We're about to open one in Leni. The Roman Catholic Church is providing the land to build that office, and we staff that office, and the bishop there will help us according to the projects as they are coming in. The next one will be in further down the south, but in Jeremy, and we're planning to open one also in Central Plateau with Bishop Désiré Jean. So we are still active all over the place. And more than that, in terms of what we are planning to do in terms of and I'm glad that my colleagues at Food for the Poor Florida have said yes to it. We'll be building 2 villages of 200 families each. What's happening in Haiti these days? Families are so isolated. We go there, you walk 10 kilometers, you get 5 families. You walk another 5 kilometers, 10 families, and so on. It's difficult for them to get access to public services. And Alan, you have been to Haiti, you worked there for 4 years. You didn't work in Port-au-Prince or the countryside, Central Plateau and the Northeast, you know what I'm talking about. Elizabeth, you have traveled extensively in Haiti, you see that. Families are so isolated, they don't have access to public services. But if you have villages of 200 families, we're building a school, a clinic, people will have access to public services, and they will learn how to live together. And beside those homes, there will be community project development for economic empowerment. So that's what we're planning to do. We have been doing that in other parts of Haiti, but as we're serving those in the south, we keep our work going on in the rest of Haiti. So people make sure that nobody is doing what they're having before the earthquake.
Yeah, thank you for that, sharing those details. And I know, just as one other example, thinking about bringing services to people and helping to facilitate that connectivity. In my time with the St. Barnabas Agriculture Center up outside of Cap-Haitian, there's a Food for the Poor built community just down the road. And I know you all have, and there are a number of things you all have partnered with St. Barnabas on, but one of those is providing a few of those houses for students, which is important. It opens up St. Barnabas as an educational institution for the whole country, because people who are from other parts of the country, they may not have resources to actually, get up, leave, and go live in another town. They're able to do that. It makes it that much more accessible. So that's just one small example of things that you all have done. I think we have time for one more question before turning to our closing prayer. And this could be a whole other panel discussion, but I want to sort of pose it to everyone anyone who feels called to respond. We've talked about there are a lot of connections, a lot of relationships between Haiti and the Episcopal churches in the US. And we've talked about Haitian-led ministry, Haitian-led solutions. Not every entity in the US is equipped for that or has had a conversation about Haitian-led solutions and about this type of collaboration that you're talking about. So what recommendations would you have? How would you encourage US-based partners to start that conversation, to engage in that type of conversation? Or is that open to anyone who feels called to respond?
I let Kevin go first and then I can complete.
Sounds good.
Isabel, it looked like you were about to jump in. Why don't you take the lead on that, and I'll follow up.
Yeah, so one of the biggest, I think, recommendations I have is get to know the community in Haiti, get to know, really work alongside leaders that are already present in the community. What are their needs? Do proper assessments with their guide. I'll give a good example of this. We have been responding, even though it's not Haiti, but we've been responding to the Honduran fire in an island off of Guanaja over the weekend. And we were getting ready to mobilize our air freight. And I waited for the assessment. And one of the things that they said is, we have enough what we need right now. And tarps, which I would think in a fire would be so needed because it's an island, the winds are so, the gusts are so high that the tarps are just going to be flown away. So a lot of times what we think is a solution is not the proper adaptability for the terrain, for the community. Get to really know the partner, the location, and then begin to network. Start forming beautiful conversations with the SEEP or with St. Vincent's, and how to sit in a conversation and listen. I love Haitian-led. I love a bottom-up collaboration. Let them lead what that response should be. And so that would be my biggest, recommendation, is to really, listen and be in tune for what are the needs, and allow the community to also have some skin in the game, right? What does that mean? Let them come up also with what their responsibility and their ownership of this process. That is very important because it allows for sustainability. And what we've seen over years is where an organization comes in, but then once they leave, it's not self-sustaining. So how do you empower the community to continue that? And that is a conversation of listening, of making sure that you're in tune with the needs of the community. So I'll leave it there, Kevin.
Yeah, that's great. Bishop?
Yes, if I may, I'm glad that Elizabeth is here. And I'm Haitian. I live abroad, I have a passport, I'm Haitian by birth, and that's my home. What I'm going to say, I'm going to take full responsibility for it. A lot of people are talking about Haitian-led solution. I'm for it. But I think an hybrid solution would be better. And the best example is hybrid solution, where people can get together. The best example is St. Vincent's School for handicapped children in Haiti. I was born and raised in the Episcopal Church. I knew very well Sister Joan, who founded that school. She used to come to go to the further northwest to collect handicapped children, take them to Port-au-Prince. She used to stay in my house. My uncle was a lay leader in the church. I knew that I grew up with the sisters. At some point, the sisters had to leave the country, and the school was not doing well. It has taken that partnership between the American board and a local director to make it work. All I'm saying is, Haitians, where we are today, we cannot get out of it alone. We need partnership. We need collaboration. And we need to find solutions not on our own side, but together. We can suggest things and we sit down and we talk to you and you listen to us and then we share. That's what solution comes from, not only Haitian solution. but we have to get it done together. Look at Food for the Poor. Whatever we are doing without Florida, nothing will happen. Therefore, I've been there for 6 years. I was in check with my colleagues in Florida. How do you see that? How can we do it together to make sure we get hybrid solution? I'm not to be political. That is good for every step, every area in the Haitian life.
Kevin, anything to add?
You know, the only thing that I would add to that, or to what Jezebel said, is that when Food for the Poor executes a project, whether it be housing, school, community center, income generating, it starts with the community development officers in Haiti. They're the ones that go out in the field, they talk with leadership in the field, and then they come back to Florida and say, this is what we believe needs to be done, and this side runs the economics of it all and funds it. But I just thought I would throw that in, Alan.
That makes sense. Thank you. Well, we have unfortunately come to our time, but I'm grateful for the generosity of you all being with us today, sharing your insight and wisdom about the situation in Haiti, the work that your organizations are doing. And thank you all for tuning in to this program as well, for your questions. I hope that we can stay in touch and continue to build relationships together. And so to close us out, I'll turn it back over to Mother Corolla for a closing prayer. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank all of the participants in this webinar and all of you who came. I encourage you to look at the websites for Food for the Poor and for St. Vincent's, foodforthepoor.org. And the St. Vincent's website is in the chat as well. And let us pray. Lord, we thank you for the ministry that you give us, that we get to share in your work of ministry and be your hands and feet. We thank you for the people and nation of Haiti, for the work of Food for the Poor, and for the work of St. Vincent's. We pray for the recovery of this nation after what has been going on over these months, for the ministry of Bishop Oge there and your church in general. We ask for your protection and mercy and compassion in Jesus' name.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.